The James Show Podcast.
Okay, so you just heard the press conference from Governor Greg Abbott. If you're just joining us, we just played it and you missed it. But I thought that went pretty well. It was not a whole lot of meat and potatoes on the plate, just a bunch of thank yous. You did a great job. No, you did a great job. No, you did a great job. No, you did a great job. And so I was hoping for a little more details on what the reaction would be, because I'm not liking some of the stuff I'm reading. We had Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick announce a bunch of state senators who are going to serve on what's now called the Select Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding. And I don't really like the sound of that. And just generally speaking, I don't think there's a government solution to natural disasters. But here's where it starts to run afoul of my political sensibilities here. There are a bunch of counties who looked at the installing flood sirens in some of their floodplains, and they ran the math themselves. And they said, well, for a flood that happens once every 100 years, this is the likelihood that it would happen. This is how much it costs to put up a siren system. This is how much it would cost to maintain it for that entire 100-year span. And this is how much we would stand to lose in the difference of having a siren or not. And then they did the own math on behalf of their taxpayers in that county and said it's not good for the taxpayers to spend that money here. The return is so unlikely to pay for the cost that we're not going to do it. Now, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has come back behind him and said, oh, well, for the nearby counties that didn't want to do the flood sirens, the state will do it for them. Oh, great. Now you have to pay for it. Now I have to pay for it. Mike Traina has to pay for it. Everyone has to pay for it. When the county themselves, the people closest to the danger, the people whose lives and property, and I guess cattle, are on the line, decided it's not a worthy investment, Dan Patrick just went and overrode all that and said, no, we're going to make you pay for it anyway. You know, none of this is free. Oh, they can't afford it. Well, the state of Texas will pay for it. Well, that doesn't come from fairy dust. That comes out of your backside. That comes out of your property taxes. And every month when you get that little that mortgage payment that auto drafts out of your account, don't you remember about half of that is just taxes and escrow and interest? It's not even principal. And if you're wondering why every time they the mortgage rate goes up just a little bit, that's pretty much your taxes and insurance. And so, yes, this does affect you. This affects you every month. You're paying for past decisions that are this terrible right now. And if you feel like this isn't fair, I bought this house 10, 15 years ago, and my monthly mortgage payment keeps going up. Bro, that's all taxes and insurance. That's not your interest. That's not your principal. That stuff was set in stone when you bought the house a decade ago, for some of you 2 decades ago. The only thing that is hurting you out of this are these terrible decisions, the spending that happens in Austin. And this is why you're listening to WBAP. This is why you keep up with politics and statecraft in general. It's because it costs you a lot of money, doesn't it? So the stuff that comes out of your paycheck, a lot of that goes to D.C. That's why we pay attention so much on WBAP to what's happening in Congress and Senate all the time. Even if it's not cool or sexy or exciting, it's your money. And so then for property taxes and sales taxes and all these other dumb fees that you get hit upside the head with, this is how it's being squandered down in Austin. So that's this kind of stuff I'm looking out for, and I just find it completely frustrating because there are lessons to be learned here, and it seems both sides of the aisle are intent on taking the exact opposite interpretation of what myself, and I think most of the listeners right now, not all of them over here. I have people who love to fuss at me because when I was making the case in the first hour of the show that the Democrats love growing government, Republicans love growing government as well. And so I find this extremely frustrating how no one looks at whether it's the big, beautiful bill or whether it's the flooding here in Texas. No one sees the problem and says, well, you know what we need to do? Maybe we need to make government smaller. That never happens. Never happens. Well, Rick just wrote in from McKinney, and thank you for including your town. That makes it so helpful because I don't like saying last names of, private citizens if I don't have to. So Rick in McKinney writes in, he says, Republicans and Trump are cutting things left and right. You missed the State Department, USAID, Department of Education cuts. You missed the coming cuts to NPR and PBS. You really think Dems would do the same or better? Trump's BBB will not grow deficits, by the way. The CBO is whack, and you bought it. The BBB will grow the economy big time. Obviously, your game is saying stupid, provocative things. Guess I took the bait. Oh, well. Well, thank you for listening, Rick and McKinney. I appreciate that, number one. Number two is, Republicans and Trump, they did cut a few things, but the extra spending that they added to the bill was bigger than the cuts they made. So the big, beautiful bill is a net spending increase. Now, if you're saying, well, you're admitting that, but the economy is going to grow, and so tax revenue is going to way outshoot whatever the Congressional Budget Office is proposing. Oh, really? Is it overshooting it by $175 billion? Because that's about what the deficit increase is going to be. Just in the first year, it's right at $200 billion. No, it's not going to grow that much. It's not. Look, it will grow the economy, or it should grow the economy, all other things being the same. But no, come back to me. Come back to me when the deficit doesn't get smaller or the budget never gets balanced. I mean, is anyone even bothering talking about a balanced budget these days? Yeah, me and Rand Paul and Tom Massey and Brian Harrison. There's four of us. That's about it. So, look, man, I agree. The Dems would not do better than the Republicans when it comes to slowing the growth of government or stopping the growth of government or reducing the size of government. But that's not enough for me. You have you have the choice of two roommates. One's going to kick you in the crotch. The other one's going to slap you in the face. Which one do you want? I would say neither. Rick would say, yeah, give me the slap. Give me the face slapper. That's what it looks like to me, Rick. And I'm just off the train. I can't just go along with the lesser of two evils anymore. We're going to lesser our two evils right into bankruptcy. That's where we're headed. This is how empires collapse. This is how the Soviet Union collapsed. Did the Soviet Union collapse because they didn't have a Golden Dome and someone just did a missile attack on them and that's how their country fell apart? No, it was a fiscal collapse. It was a collapse because they couldn't pay their bills anymore and they couldn't print any more money to get out of it and no one would give them it. I mean, I want to say, you got to trust me. That's not going to work. Everyone just bookmark this in your head. And in about 5-6 years, when the Social Security Trust Fund runs out and everyone gets crunched by not listening to the fiscal conservatives out there, am I going to get an apology? I don't think so. I don't expect one. I just want you to remember here. And yeah, look, I'm with you, Rick. I think philosophically, I love the idea that NPR and PBS could get some cuts. But NPR and PBS's funding is like what? $1 billion? $1 billion? We're running a $2 trillion deficit. And so you're cutting. What does that come out to? Like not even 0.5%? That's like 0.2% of the deficit. Not even of the full budget, just the deficit. So yeah, look, it's good. I'm glad NPR and PBS are getting cut. If they finally get cut. But we are way far away from not only cutting the deficit, being anything that resembles fiscal conservatism. And it blows my mind that fiscal conservatives will send me angry emails sticking up for these terrible, terrible ideas. And that's another thing I think we should all learn from the disaster recovery and the disaster that happened on July 4th with the flooding here in the Hill Country. NPR and PBS are making the case right now. Well, people, especially in rural areas, don't have access to important emergency information, and this saves lives. Where were you on July 4th? Did it save anybody then? Or did we still have 135 of our fellow neighbors dying? I mean, why does everyone think there's a government solution to so many of these problems? What more can they do? More sirens? What, do you got to send a bureaucrat to go knock on everyone's door? Hey, the water's rising. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Big takeaway from the Governor Abbott's press conference is the new death toll number is 135 for the state of Texas from the July 4th floods. Just terrible news. But we'll jump into that. To NPR, PBS, where were we at on these floods? And how on earth does anyone make the case that we need government-funded media outlets in 2025 when you have 6 bazillion streaming options, you have all these other private radio stations, all these other TV stations, you've got social media, you've got the internet. I mean, I can't believe there's anybody even trying to argue for NPR and PBS unless you're employed by them. And I know I've been a little worked up on today's episode. Here's a guy that can calm me down. My next guest is one of my favorite guests. I'm a big fan of his work, and you hear his words through my mouth quite a bit on the James Show because I'm a big fan of his books as well. Evan Sayet's back on the James Show. Welcome back, Evan.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
All right. So we're down here reeling from the aftermath of the flooding disaster, and A lot of us find it appalling that NPR and PBS are in Congress right now saying it is vitally important, especially for rural areas, to have the emergency notifications and information that NPR and PBS provides. And where were they on the floods? I think they just failed us on the floods. How do they have the gall to make that argument? Like, well, public safety's at risk without NPR or PBS. Meanwhile, we're still looking for the 136th dead neighbor.
Right. Indeed. As you know, there's simply no relation between truth and what the political left says. They just look for any opportunity to score a point. And what's funny about it is that they don't think about tomorrow. When their point tomorrow utterly contradicts the point they're making today, it doesn't matter. They've already moved on.
Totally agree here. The other big juxtaposition that I would like to pick your brain on here is what's going on with the Epstein files, because you're real good at explaining how people can go back and forth in doublethink, where they say one thing one day and then they say the opposite thing the next day with a straight face.
Well, what's difficult about this, and we have to be careful because we are right at the very beginning of this story playing out, at least as far as Bondi and Bongino and Cash Patel. So I don't want to jump the gun because I'm not pleased with the handling, but I adore these people. I know them personally. I know several of them extremely well for a good long time, and I have a great deal of faith that the truth will out and whatever stumbles have occurred. But they do seem to be, the administration as a whole seems to be contradicting the promises they made during the campaign and even earlier, that they would release the Epstein file in total. But what isn't just beginning to play out is the political left playing this, and suddenly they're calling for its release. Well, they had possession of it for half a decade, 4 years when Joe Biden was president. They had the absolute ability to release all these things, and they didn't. So while both sides at this moment seem to be contradicting what they've said, our side hasn't played itself out yet, so I'm not willing to say. But the left is doing what the left does, which is, A, not only contradicting themselves, but B, not caring that if and when they do come back into power and they keep it hidden again, they're simply not responding to the consequences of what they said today.
Yeah, well, I would take it back even further, because Epstein got taken into custody under Trump 1.0. So they had the chance to demand it be released there when they weren't in a position of power. Then they had the run of the roost under Biden. No care for in the world. And in fact, they've had about 6 months of Trump 2.0 to care. And then it was just in the last few days that they decided, well, we've got to put some legislation in committee here and get these files released. It's so patently, brazenly, just obviously partisan and questionable. You almost slap your forehead that they have the gall to do it.
Well, except that how many times over the years have we had to slap our foreheads that they had the gall to do it? Just one that pops into my head is during the COVID, where everybody was locked down, where you couldn't even go to church, but you could go out and riot and loot and steal.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. We're talking with Evan Sayet, author and satirist. I recommend highly. Just start with the first book, and you'll want to get the rest of them, the Kindergarten of Eden. We also have an interesting juxtaposition here, and you're my king of the doublethink explanations here, on what's going on with ICE agents. Ana Navarro said that Latinos in America are living under a reign of terror because ICE agents are harming her community. Meanwhile, ICE agents are getting shot. We had one shot here in Alvarado. We had a couple shot down in Texas and McAllen. Actually, 3 shot down there. We just had another ICE agent from Dallas get shot in Oklahoma City, picking up a guy. It seems like all the violence is going one way, and somehow we're supposed to believe Latinos are supposed to be scared of ICE, and ICE isn't supposed to be scared of doing their job.
Right. Well, there's 2 points to be made here. One is that while Ana Navarro says that, if you look at the polling shows that the Latino community is overwhelmingly in support. of ICE in no small part because it's their community that gets most affected when illegal aliens come to the country and wreak havoc in their neighborhoods. You know, when criminal aliens cross the border, they don't tend to move into Bel Air or Hyannisport, or they tend to move into Hispanic neighborhoods. And so those most supportive of arresting the criminal aliens are the Hispanics themselves. They're living under the terror of the cartels, not the terror of ICE. And what's telling is, of course, it's not just this that they're violent about. Go back, all the way to Tawana Brawley when I was, in my 20s or 30s. Violence is the go-to position of the political left. And it's very, very simple. Why? Because they cannot make a large logical argument. They cannot persuade using words. They cannot argue in the affirmative for what they believe. And so the only way they can persuade is, one, to portray the alternative, the other side, as so evil. So ICE is evil. To portray us as Nazis, as garbage, as deplorable. To either portray us as so evil that they must support the other side by default, or to be violent, to violently intimidate. So the violence that we're seeing in response to ICE is not a response to ICE. It's the usual go-to response of a party that has nothing that they can argue for in the affirmative. They only have violence to use.
Yeah, you're right. That checks out on other issues too, whether it's Palestine or Black Lives Matter, or now the Antifa guy shooting up the ICE facility here in Alvarado. We're talking with Evan Sayet. You can check out his website, evansayet.com. Evan Sayet, Kindergarten of Eden is that first book. Start there. You'll fall in love with his work. You'll want to get the rest of them. But Evan, we've been having a discussion quite a bit on this show, especially in the last month or so. I think it really started with the big, beautiful bill, but so many of these other issues have sort of followed the same pattern that, if the Republicans are going to act so much like Democrats, at what point do you stop voting for the Republicans? Or how do you get them to change their ways? How do you get them to actually want to shrink the size of government, to reduce spending? And I don't mean cut a few things here and there. I mean a net spending cut, like cut more than they increase. And I'm not really satisfied with any of the answers for that. What do you say on that subject?
Well, it's awfully difficult. We thought we were doing that with the Trump administrations. We thought we were doing that that was the entire point of the Tea Party movement. Not a lot of people, or maybe they do, know that TEA stands for taxed enough already. We tried, and it's a difficult thing to do because everybody wants government to be cut except their pet projects. And people do need to get reelected and whatnot. And the other thing is, it's only a two-party system, so what are you going to do? Are you really going to take the side of the party that's for open borders? Are you really going to take the side that's against, who wants to defund the police? Are you really going to take the side of the people who, cheer on for the Palestinians? And so you really have to go down the list of what's most important to you. And time and again, you're going to find yourself having no choice in a two-party system than voting for the Republican. And they sort of know that. So I don't know how one gets them to actually cut the budget, because pork and there's another word for it, but making sure that your local constituency gets what it is they want is part of how you get reelected.
Are you talking about earmarks?
I don't know the answer. And earmarks, exactly. Thank you. It is just part of the system, and I don't know how you get out of it, but I do know that right now we have no other choice. We cannot support the political left because one is inefficient. One is a long-term disaster, but the other one is an immediate disaster helped by people who truly wish to overthrow Western civilization.
Yeah, I agree with all that. So, Evan, Sayet, I have a concern here, and I was throwing out a theory on yesterday's show that we've had like 3 different shootings of ICE agents in our neighborhood, in our region here, just in the last week. There was the 3 people shot in McAllen down in South Texas, Alvarado. There was 30 rounds fired. Luckily, they're terrible with guns, and there was only a graze wound to an Alvarado policeman. And then we had a Dallas ICE agent who had to go pick up a guy in Oklahoma, and he just got shot trying to do his job. Now, my theory says this is going to keep escalating, and it started when the Democrats bum rushed Delaney Hall in New Jersey to get into that ICE detention facility. They put some handcuffs on the mayor there, and the representative LaMonica McIver was facing charges. But since they didn't drop the hammer on them, that basically gave the green light to, hey, attack ICE. So then they start throwing bricks at ICE officers in Los Angeles when they're picking up people there. They were throwing bricks at the ones who did the pot farm raids last week. And
they were actually shooting guns. They were shooting guns at the raid at the pot farm where they found a sex trafficker and underage children, unaccompanied minors. You would think, you would hope, you would pray that the political left would be on the side of unaccompanied minors, would be on the side of children who are being trafficked. But it's really an all-out war in which nothing is held sacred by the political left. Nothing is considered beyond the pale. And you're right. Look, I for a long time, I've recognized there's at least a good portion of them that is a cost-benefit equation. And so long as the cost to them of engaging in these acts is nothing, the benefit's always going to exceed the cost. The cost of doing it has to rise to the level that they don't want to engage in any longer. And that means more than a slap on the wrist. That means more than releasing them without bond right back into the street. It means really making an example of them and making sure that there's a cost involved in committing these crimes.
We're talking with Evan Sayet, author and satirist. One thing I like about following you on social media. Did he just drop off? I heard the old Zoom.
I'm okay. Still here.
Well, I heard the old droplet, whatever it is. One thing I like about following you on social media is you cover some of the stories that I'm interested in that the rest of the media is ignoring. There was the recent bombing by the Israelis in Syria. No one saw headlines about it. No, it wasn't even big on any of the talk shows here on WBAP. But when I went and dug into it, I found a very interesting story that makes Israel look good. And then I slapped my forehead. Oh, this is why they're concerned. Yeah, they're concerned right? When Israel bombs everybody else except for this one story. And why is that, Evan?
Well, it's very simple. It's because Israel is one of the Judeo-Christian Western nations, and therefore anything that the media can do to denigrate them, to hurt them, to undermine them, to make them look bad. If you are trying to make the case that Western civilization is not exceptional, well, then how do you go about making that point? Well, you accuse the Israelis, the Jews, the good people of committing the kinds of crimes that you're covering up for the bad people. I mean, one of the laws, one of the law of my unified theory of liberalism is that the left will always ascribe to the innocent. They will elevate the evil they ascribe to the innocent to the level of evil that they are defending. So because they're defending the Islamicists, they have to make the Israelis the bad guys, the terrorists, the genocidal ones. And then when the Islamicists prove themselves to be the genocidal ones, they have to cover it up.
Yeah, and so the bombing in Syria, I learned, was to protect the Druze people. And I thought this was really important because if the rest of the world saw the Israelis / Jews, I know they're conflated heavily in the news world, actually protecting an Arab population who is not Jewish, and they would look like the good guys.
Indeed, and that simply cannot be allowed. It's one of the rules of the unified theory of liberalism that they will invariably and inevitably side with evil over good, wrong over right, ugly over beautiful, profane over profound. Everything that is negative, they will take its side, and everything that's positive, they will attempt to denigrate it until everything meets in the middle, and thing is recognized as better or worse than anything else.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I like out of Evan State. Thank you very much, sir. And if y'all want to look up that story, go check it out. Druze, D-R-U-Z-E. They're a religious minority that's kind of half Muslims, half Jewish, half Christian. They're a mishmash. And the Israelis seem to be protecting them because they're pretty much the only people in the region that aren't trying to genocide the Jewish people. What a great story that was. And I'm glad you were putting a spotlight on that. Thank you, Evan.
Of course, my pleasure.
All right, go check out his work. Start with his book, The Kindergarten of Eden. He's got a good one that rebukes the atheist origin myth. There's a lot of good stuff out there. He's one of my favorite guys, and one of like maybe 4 people that I'm willing to admit is smarter than me. So I know we talk about a lot of hot topics, and immigration, the Epstein list, but this one, it sounds a little nerdy, but this affects you more than most of the stories we're talking about today. A federal judge here in Texas issued a ruling yesterday that removed a Biden-era policy from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which says the Biden said medical debt cannot be considered on credit reports. Well, we're going to now start considering medical debt on credit reports, and this is going to affect you, and probably in a good way. My next guest is Paula Oster, founder and CEO of a credit repair firm, Better Qualified. Paula Oster, explain this in more layman's terms. Did I get my summary right?
You were spot on. This has been a political football that has been tossed back and forth for, a couple of different administrations, obviously. But the reality is this could not come at a worse time, right? You have inflation, you have, interest rates are at a high, and people are just struggling, and consumers. And now you throw in the fact that this is going to come back onto people's credit reports. They will literally eliminate millions of people from the finance pool. So they won't be able to buy a car. They won't be able to obtain any type of financing, certainly mortgages. And it's just not going to be a good thing for the economy. And when you throw in the fact that student loans have now, literally eliminated millions of student loan borrowers because those accounts have now gone into collections and they're being reported on consumers' credit reports. I don't understand what the administration's play was here. Nobody was asking for debt forgiveness. All they asked was that these accounts and these situations didn't continue to hurt people even further.
Oh, well, I think I can explain it then. I'm on the other side of this one because, granted, this will not be good for people who do have high medical debt and student loans debt that could prevent them from getting into a mortgage or a car loan, or possibly just cause them to have a higher interest rate. However, having these less creditworthy people in the borrowing pool makes the costs go up for the rest of us who don't have these problems. So I see it as a net benefit to the rest of us.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, again, it's gone back and forth with a couple of different situations. Back in 2018, they were talking about civil judgments and tax liens, and they did remove them from the consumer reports. The problem is when you have the estimates, the CFPB is saying that it's going to be about 20 points on average that the consumer is going to lose. That's just not true. When a collection hits a consumer's account, it's minimum 50 points. It's more like 100 plus points that these consumers are going to lose from their credit scores. No doubt.
We're talking with Paula Oster from the credit repair firm Better Qualified about this CFPB rule being repealed. Well, I'm kind of optimistic in the fact that if you take these, if you put people who are more likely to default on into the pool of people who are getting loans, and that makes the cost go up for the rest of us. And for the average mortgage, just assuming the typical U.S. home, about $350,000, if your mortgage rate goes from 6% to 7%, that's almost $200 a month.
Yep. Again, no doubt about it. I just didn't agree with the way they went about this. And we're not talking about people who are defaulting on like buy now, pay later programs when they're ordering DoorDash and buying their tickets to Coachella.
Yeah.
And they're buying goods and services that they want, they don't need. This is medical debt. And if you took out, elective procedures. You're talking about people that have cancer. You're talking about people that were in accidents. You're talking about people that got sick. They should not, get any further damage and kicked while they're down. So this situation, medical debt is not indicative of a person's credit worthiness. I've been doing this for about 25 years. And if you took all of the people that had medical debt on their credit reports and removed it like they should have and just left all their other financial obligations, you would get left with a very clear picture of their credit worthiness.
All right. Well, it was a good chat. Paul Oster from the credit repair firm Better Qualified. How do they find your work outside of WBAP, sir?
Just go to betterqualified.com. We have a full staff of people ready. Unfortunately for us, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, we're being inundated with calls from consumers that are saying, please help us get this stuff deleted from our credit report, which we have been successful in doing. So just because the CFPB ruling got reversed, we have ways that we will be able to get those accounts deleted again from your credit reports. So go to betterqualified.com.
Thank you very much, Paul Oster. Coming up next on The James Show. NPR and PBS say their funding shouldn't be cut because they're unbiased. First, not true. Second, even if it were, I think it should be cut anyway. Here are the receipts next on The James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.